Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective.
Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Justin Fenster. It gets a little confusing when you put the holidays in the mix right there, especially during an all-star break. Things slow down just a touch, but then we lift it back up. We turn it up to 11 and get ready for the second half of the NBA season. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern. Ray Flowers and I literally split the stream in which Ray does it Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays. I do it Tuesdays and Wednesdays, same time, all week long, noon Eastern, talking an array of sports topics. Ray Flowers talks a lot of baseball, and that's what he's getting you ready for the MLB season. I talk some football and basketball and other sports too. I'm going to bring in some of our analysts to talk about other ways that you could win. If you look right down below in that document, you'll see that you could sign up for the MVP Pass plan, try it out for a month or all year long support at FantasyGuru.com. In just a little bit, it is the start of our team reviews from 2025. I'll be talking Arizona Cardinals with Armando Marsal, talk about Harrison. We'll be talking about Trey McBride, what the draft value for McBride could be in 2026. New coach, Mikey LaFleur. So we're going to talk with Armando about what to expect from this team and what needs they have specifically going in to the 2026 season that they need to address immediately. For me personally, today we're going to start talking about NBA, though, because I'm going to get a little time to talk some futures talk with all of you and talk about some of those teams that could potentially win the NBA championship. I'll also take a look at the awards too. But something else that I'm going to be talking about, and I'll start off by here, talking about betting strategy. And with betting strategy ending on a good note going into All-Star break, I put one bet out there. It hit the Austin Reeves assist. I feel like that's one I'm probably going to be going back to just a little bit if one of Luka Doncic or LeBron James does not play. But let's talk about how exactly I find some of my favorite things to bet. And the reason why I feel like this is important is because a lot of you that subscribe to FantasyGuru.com, which is where, by the way, you can find all my work, basketball, football, you get it all. And we have content that's up the wazoo that never, ever stops. No one ever sleeps when it comes to that. But the reason why I wanted to talk today about what the process is, looking at rebounding props and assist props, which is normally where I hang out in when it comes to NBA bets, because I feel the most comfortable with rebounds. I understand it. The most assists too. I don't want to say it's very easy to tell, or otherwise we'd be going 100%, but there are definitely some things that you can look at that correlate. And for those out there, because a few of you have asked, well, Fensty, you put your bets out there, why can't I find fun rebounding props too? And I feel like that's something that you should absolutely look for. And that's something that you should absolutely feel empowered to come up with, especially if you're in it for rebound betting. Now, here's where I don't connect. And that's with someone who just waltzes in for a night, bets, the night doesn't go well, then complains. You got to be in it for the marathon, and you got to understand what exactly we're looking at here. We're not just playing for the day. We're playing for the whole season and postseason. And at FantasyGuru.com, the content doesn't end once the NBA regular season ends. We got about 2 months remaining in the regular season, but then we've got playoffs. We do betting content. We do DFS content for the playoffs too. So what's the first thing I look at when it comes to betting on NBA props? The first, besides them, I look at the total. The total is the first thing that I look at. But then where do I go from there? Because I see a low spread with a high total. Immediately I start to look and think of, okay, how fast do these teams play? Because if I'm looking at a low spread and a high total, then that's going to make for a major pace-up spot, or could be a faster paced game if you've got one of the top 10. Now, for the season, and I talk a lot about in my writing, I talk a lot about in my podcast that I have at FantasyGuru.com, Fensty's Basketball Diaries. I talk a lot about pace because pace produces possessions. I talk a lot about pace because it's very important, and it's something that you can go and look and find on NBA.com. because that shows how fast the offense moves. Miami has been top all year. Utah, Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago. Portland, Washington, Cleveland, Minnesota, and Indiana. Those are your fastest moving offenses for the season. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you could just attack them because of that. Because when you have the Washington Wizards in a game, when you have probably the Chicago Bulls in game, the Utah Jazz are actively tanking. So when you have them in a game too, it's not always going to be a low spread. And that's where you have to be careful because the algorithms and the books, and they'll all know that. They'll all be on that, and they'll all raise it. And when you see these props up a number or two, it's normally because of an injury impact, because somebody else is getting that usage, somebody else is getting that rebounding chance. And so the books pick up on that. Now, we can start to look at what the books don't pick up on, and that's the pace-up spot nature. And that's why, if you've been riding with the Elite Mafia all year long, which I hope you have, you see that a lot of my bets that I put in, not a lot of them, but a decent chunk of them have been involving the Boston Celtics, because the Celtics play at a very slow pace. So if they're facing one of those top 10s and the spread is somewhat low, Boston has been good. They've been Jason Tatum. I don't want to say Jason Tatum who, but how they've performed without Jason Tatum has been absolutely outstanding to see. So Boston plays at the slowest pace. So I want to try to take advantage of that. Now, if I'm looking at props, let's say Jaylen Brown's rebound prop is one that I've gone to a lot this year. We've had a lot of success with. And that's because they're a slow-moving team. They're often in spreads that are 8.5 or more because they're that good of a team once again. And here's the deal. I'm not going to look for a Jaylen Brown rebounding prop necessarily against the Brooklyn Nets. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why not? It's going to be too high. The books are going to have it too high. I am looking, and I feel like we're going to get this line for Jaylen Brown. 6.5 rebounds is one that I like. I like 5.5 and 6.5 rebounds. That's where I stand. For the more high-octane rebounders out there, I like 7.5. I really don't like to mess with the double figures. I went on a little bit of a run last year with Domantas Sabonis because he was the king of rebounding. But for the most part, I don't mess with the double digits when it comes to those props. I'm in the 5.5 and the 6.5. So you're not always going to find at 5.5, 6.5, you're not going to find those top rebounders. No, but Jaylen Brown has been rebounding. Derek White had been rebounding. That's what got me on the Celtics to begin with, because I noticed that Derek White, although he was going up by 1 and that's it, I was noticing a lot of 4.5 rebound lines for Derek White. And that's how it all started. Derek White, I've noticed, though, started to rebound less over time. And Jaylen Brown was taking a little bit more advantage of that, and we hopped on Jaylen Brown. Now, the Boston Celtics addressed a pretty big team need. They got themselves a center and one that can provide them offense and floor stretching ability, which they've thrived with in the past. And that is going to take away some of those rebounding chances. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to go to Jaylen Brown anymore because the Boston Celtics have Nikola Vucevic now. No, I'm hoping that those lines are lower. I'm hoping that it stays at 6.5 now instead of toggling like it had been. That's what I'm looking for. And when I'm looking, so I looked at the pace of play. Jaylen Brown's got a good matchup, a team that he should be able to stay in the game. Let's say he's facing Cleveland. Cleveland's a great example because Cleveland can compete, but they play very fast and they have their defensive issues. So Jaylen Brown is facing the Cavs and he's got a 6.5 line. The next thing I do after I do all that is I look for rebounding chances. Now, rebounding chances, you got to be careful of. You got to leave a little bit more room for error there because not everything's exact. So rebounding chances are if a player is in the vicinity of grabbing that rebound. And with rebounding chances, that's one that's very telling because you can see who stands out from their teams that are always involved in, if not the rebounding, trying to box out being right there. But it works the other way too, because then I check out, and this is something new this year that I hadn't done before, then I look at the percentage of rebounding. Like, here's the interesting thing. The top, over the last 5 games, the top before the break, of course. The player with the most rebounding chances per game over the last 5 was Moussa Diabate. Moussa Diabate at about 26.5. But here's the interesting thing with Moose. While it's at 26.5 and he should be able to burn numbers at 7.5 and 8.5, the percentage isn't high. He's grabbing them at less than 40% of the time. So that's where I've started to hone the craft and look a little bit more and take the percentages seriously. Whereas Donovan Clingan, who grabs every rebound under the sun, he's averaging 22 rebounding chances per game, but he's grabbing them at a near 60% rate, which means think about it like this. Every ball that goes up that's accounted for these chances, this guy, every single one, automatically has a baked-in 60% chance. And remember, there are 5 players on the court. He has a 60% chance based off the data of grabbing that rebound. But here's the interesting thing. He's one of the top guys. He's one of those. I mean, his rebounding prop will always be at 10.5, 11.5. It's where you go for guys like I mentioned, a Jaylen Brown type. Over his last 5 games, Jaylen Brown has literally averaged, Jaylen Brown has averaged a little over 10 rebounding chances per game. So he's normally in the 11, 12 range. So it's been going down a bit. Is it Vucevic? It might be. It might be. But he'll still have his games. And the big thing we can rely on here with Jaylen Brown, he still is averaging double-digit rebounding chances. And also, he's grabbing them at about a 58.5% rate, which is huge. That's big right there. If he was sitting there at 40, 45, that's one thing. But now that you've got someone like Vucevic there who's bigger, that's going to make it tougher for Jaylen Brown to grab rebounds. But that doesn't mean we're just going to abandon ship just like that. So that's what I look for. What I look for from the rebounding chances out there, I look for those guys that can grab them quickly too, that don't need a lot of time. If you remember, I was looking at a lot of Ausar Thompson and Tari Eason props. Very similar players when it comes to attacking the glass. They're relentless, but they're not the biggest players. However, they average, both of them, a good amount of rebounding chances, and also they don't need a lot of minutes. That's the big thing too. I look for players that don't need 35 minutes to be able to grab 6, 7 rebounds. Trust me, Julius Randle, I played that game with him. There are some nights when Julius Randle will grab 9, 10, and then there are majority other nights where he's going to be sitting there at about 6 rebounds, and that's it. But he plays a bunch of minutes. So that's why it's been hard for me to trust on him when it's right on the line. But, I mean, let's even look in the last 5 games at a Tari Eason or an Ausar Thompson. So Ausar Thompson over the last 5 games is at 10, right? He's averaging 10 rebounding chances per game. He's grabbing them during that time at a 60% rate, flat 60% rate, which is a good thing. So now if Detroit is playing a quicker team than those, and it's not just even if it is a 16.5 point spread, but if it's like an 8.5, 9.5, and they're playing a very quick team, that's an area where I'll look for Ausar Thompson. Because in that regard, Ausar Thompson thinking, let's just play this out a little bit. Detroit goes up big. The starters are benched for the 4th quarter. Well, Ausar Thompson can still end up playing 25 minutes like he normally would anyway. He's going to be in. And we've seen this with teams that if the teams are up big, they'll just let their starters ride out the entire 3rd quarter, or most of the starters ride out the entire 3rd quarter. Now, do we get caught up at times with foul trouble? Of course, but anybody does. Anybody does. It happens more often than not. A player gets 2 fouls in 2 minutes, and now you're sitting there feeling sorry for yourself because the bet is all of a sudden likely not happening. Although we've seen some miracles happen. There's actually one time we bet Ausar Thompson, and he grabbed 6 rebounds, 0 in the 1st quarter. We had the 5.5 line, grabbed 6 in the 2nd quarter, 0 in the 3rd or 4th. He made it, but we've seen it happen where he's grabbed a ton of rebounds more than one time in a very quick rate. So that's why I look for those lines. So he's in double figures and he's at a 5.5 line. Now, I talked about Tari Eason. Tari Eason, you need to really have one of his teammates that are out. But Tari Eason's been hanging at around that 10 range, grabbing him 50% rate. So that's a player that we were on for a little bit. It was a little bit higher, the rebounding chances. Now they've gone down just a little bit, which is why I've been laying off of them. I don't force bets. You guys know that. So that's how I look at these rebound props. I'm looking for those 5.5, 6.5 lines because those are very hittable in pace-up spots. And if the game is not going to get out of control, we can have a lot of confidence that those props will end up hitting. Now, what about the assist side? Because here's the thing with the assists. Potential assists are measured, and that's why I like them a lot, because we can look to see via usage, and there are usage charts out there. We can see via usage who is getting the most time with the ball. And this is one where I'm going to start to bring in the futures a little bit here, because I'm going to just going to go through this here. For the awards, one of the things I was looking at when I was noticing was most improved player. Most improved player, Deni Avdija is currently on DraftKings at -120. And Deni Avdija has been strong this year. He's also, by the way, he's also had a team that's been half injured for most of the year. I love Deni Avdija. I think he's had an incredible year. But the discrepancy and the odds difference between him and Jalen Johnson is interesting, because Jalen Johnson, who suffered a big injury last year that took out a chunk of his game previous season, Jalen Johnson has been excellent. Excellent. He's at +240 right now to win most improved player. And let's not forget, with Deni Avdija, his team is healthier now. So we'll see how much it impacts his overall production, because unfortunately, a lot of these awards are now measured in numbers, and that's it. And not just, the team impact here, someone who actually watches this guy every single day and see what the team impact is. Jalen Johnson at +240 is intriguing to me. The guy can do just about everything. He is one of the very few players that I have no problem writing up and even coring at a above 10K price point. He's that good. My opinion, they traded Trey Young, besides all the other reasons to trade Trey Young. But one of the reasons why they were so confident in getting rid of Trey Young is because they had 3 guys that can run the offense and set up plays easily between Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And they had other guys and everything, but at the same time, Trey Young at that point was nothing but a distraction. And I give a lot of credit to Jalen Johnson as to where this team is going, because he's been the attractive piece on this team. He's grabbed a ton of rebounds. He scores a lot of points. He runs the offense really well. Great passer from the post. Very good at the wing. Jalen Johnson, you think about NBA players now, and I know people talk about, lack of effort. Jalen Johnson is not that guy. Jalen Johnson is a game-impacting player. You want to know how I know? It's because when he's out, we look to bet props there. When he's out, last year, Dyson Daniels, when Jalen Johnson went out last year, we bet the hell out of Dyson Daniels props. We did. It just made sense. All that usage went right to Dyson Daniels. Jalen Johnson is a beast. And +240, let's talk about the standings very quickly here as well, because this is actually pretty close. It's not like it's -500 for someone and then it's +250. No, these are closer odds here. So I'll say this. The Blazers are just a couple of games under 500. They are right now in the play-in tournament. That I will say. But so are the Hawks. The Hawks are also a couple of games under 500. So the problem is here, it's what team is going to be better by the time the end of the season rolls around. I think it's going to be close. And I'm not saying put your mortgage or life savings or anything on it, but it's interesting to me that Jalen Johnson is right now at +240, because I think Jalen Johnson is awesome. He's had players in and out. He's had pieces on his team moved on and off and on and off all these years. He's been the constant. Last year sucked when he hurt himself, but we saw the exact impact he makes on the court. So the reason why, to go full circle, I even brought him up in the first place was because Jalen Johnson, over the last 5 games, has averaged over 19 potential assists per game with over 27 points created from said assists. Now, they're not going to give you a low line on Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson's assists are always going to be in that 7.5, 8.5 area. But Jalen Johnson's one where there are going to be some nights where maybe you look at it. But potential assists are a good way to measure too, because they talk about just how much involvement there is. And it also accounts for those probably amazing passes to set up the spot-up shooters that they don't score. They miss the shot. So it sets that up right there too, which leads to the shot, because you want players that are going to lead to the shot when you're looking at assist props. And that's why I'm always constantly looking at potential assists, and I'm toggling between full season, last 10 games, last 5 games, injury impact. So there's a lot that goes into this stuff, and there's a lot. But Jalen Johnson, when I was looking at some of the awards odds, Jalen Johnson, that one stuck out for me too, because Jalen Johnson is on a team with pieces, and he's able to dominate and do just that. Whereas for MVP, you've got SGA at minus 210. He's been without pieces throughout the year, and the Thunder have still been able to dominate. You got to give him credit for that. Rookie of the year, Cooper Flagg's at minus, see, this is one of those odds I'm talking about. Cooper Flagg is at minus 650, but Con Knipple is at plus 360. I'll just say this. Con Knipple is awesome. Now, Cooper Flagg is shine too. Con Knipple deserves a little bit more love. I think Cooper Flagg just got off to a very fast start, and that's what it was. But both of these guys, it's weird to think that they played on the same college team together. But that's where the odds are separated by a lot. Defensive player, it's hard to think that Chet Holmgren will unseat Victor Wembanyama at this point. And you saw it with the Spurs, because when he was out, the Spurs became very, very vulnerable. And once he got back in, this team will play on the more slower side, and they play very strong defense up and down. And I was thinking, well, we've seen it throughout the year that the Spurs can hang with the Thunder. A full-strength Thunder, though, can the Spurs win a 7-game series? That to me, it's the closest chance to a team unseating the Thunder. But Victor Wembanyama's defense has been very, very strong this year, and I don't think anyone's going to stop that. Here's the interesting one, too. 6th man of the year, because you've got 2 guys here that are both very deserving. I think ultimately, and while the odds are in a very good spot, Naz Reid deserves it. He deserves it every year, but this year you're seeing the impact. What's great about Naz Reid is you see just how much damage he can do when Anthony Edwards is off the floor. That's been the correlation there. So when I'm looking at DFS plays, and I'm looking, well, tonight the night where I'm going to be spending the 6,300 on Naz Reid. If Anthony Edwards is out 100 times out of 100, yes, because you see a lot of that usage goes to him. He gains more shots. That doesn't mean just because you have more usage, that doesn't mean necessarily you produce more shots. It's just, it shows how much time of possession that you have. And that's what it is, how much time with the rock that they have. Ball's in their hands. That's what we're looking at. So that's why, for me, when it comes to usage, that's something that's very important when looking at assist props especially. But looking back at the awards props here, Naz Reid, I think, deserves it. But I got to say this, and this is a guy who I didn't respect when he was the, quote, number 1 guy of the Spurs. But now, as like the number 5 guy on the Spurs, I like him a lot more. When Keldon Johnson is in, and we've done a few point prop bets on him, even 1 rebound prop or 2 too. When Keldon Johnson is in, he makes a major scoring impact. You know, when he's in, he's going to take shots. That's what he does. He eats all that up. He's going to be taking shots. And I got to say, considering all the talent that San Antonio has between Wembanyama and Fox and Castle, Devin Vassell, who can shoot, Dylan Harper off the bench. So many, even Julian Champagnie has been good. especially on the defensive side. They've got a big rotation, but Keldon Johnson is still able to get his. And when he's in, that offensive flow absolutely turns up. So he's at plus 330. So I don't want to write him off necessarily, but to me, while you could get it at plus 190, unless the Thunder completely drop off, or unless the Wolves completely drop off, which I don't see happening, I still see them hanging around that top 6 for the rest of the year. They have the talent to do so. Naz Reid should win 6th man of the year. He should win it a lot of years, but this year he's done well. He's a good rebounder. He's a good scorer. Yeah, everybody has their cold shooting streaks and everything, but you know that when he's out there, kind of like Keldon Johnson, he's taking them. So I like that, and I like that future for Naz Reid. Those are the futures that I'm really looking at. Naz Reid at plus 190, and then, like I said before, Jalen Johnson at plus 240, I think absolutely is in play there. I loved him. I remember when he was just 8,500. Now he's 10,500 in DFS. So that to me, I mean, it just shows just the game impact that he makes. Now let's look a little bit at some of the futures to win the championship, because here's what DraftKings has right now. The Thunder to win the title at plus 130, the Nuggets at plus 450, Cavs at plus 1,200. So number one, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, it's, to me, I don't think Boston can beat Oklahoma City. I don't, because I'm trying to think, can Denver? Yeah, maybe a full strength Denver has a chance if someone's out for the Thunder. Thunder full strength, I don't see it happening. But, you know, when it comes to the Eastern Conference, that's a little bit of a different story for me. And I just wish that the odds were a little bit better for Boston, because we have to give Boston a lot of credit. Boston has done well, even without Jason Tatum. A lot of people just wrote them off, but they continue to play good defense. They've done a lot with the depth that they have. They've been rolling most of the season with Neemias Queta and no center. That's it. And they've still been able to play as a top team in the conference. So where's the love? Like the Black Eyed Peas used to sing. Where is the love? Plus 380 versus plus 300. I think the reason why the Cavs are where they're at right now over the Pistons, over the Knicks, over the Celtics, the reason for that is because of the glitz and the glam people see in Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. But let's just say this, guys. James Harden isn't that good of a defender, and the Cavs are going to be in positions where they're forced to keep him on the court. So they're going to either have to go a 3-guard offense to bring in one of their defensive guys on the perimeter in Ellis or something like that, or Schroeder, or they're going to really watch his minutes and make sure they get some defense in there, which they should, because Cleveland is very vulnerable in that regard. And it's hard to trust in Cleveland because they haven't really been able to stay healthy during a playoff run. So we'll see what happens there. But a lot of people now on Cleveland because, wow, Mobley, when he's in, what's that going to look like? They've got a good team. James Harden is an excellent player. Do I see that as a championship winning piece? I do not see that. I don't at all. But it'll be a fun offense to watch. It'll be very explosive. Now, Boston is at plus 380, like I mentioned. I feel like Boston can beat these teams. And also, let's talk about this too. There's a chance, and I don't know how big of a chance this is, but what if Jason Tatum is ready to come back by April? Now you've got he's coming off an injury, but a fresh Jason Tatum in there with this team that continues to prove themselves. Love that. I love that for them. So the Boston Celtics are a team to watch, and if I'm putting a 5 spot, let's say, on a future when it comes to conference championships, Boston at plus 380 is one that I'm definitely interested in. I want to say, what about the other teams in the conference? The Pistons should be up there. They absolutely should be. They play good defense. They've got a mature rotation, and I think that they deserve to be where they're at. Cleveland, we'll see with James Harden if they're too vulnerable on the defensive end. The Knicks, here's the thing with the Knicks. The Knicks have the team to do so, but are they going to be able to? That's the big thing. I question. They went through a stretch where they played horrible defense. And while I mean, I was someone that was, when Tom Thibodeau was fired, to me, I was, why? The guy was succeeding. Well, they wanted to open up the rotation a little bit more. But the Knicks bench guys haven't been great. That's the problem there. They get Jose Alvarado. That's a very solid piece, GTA 5 to get. But at the same time, versus the Celtics, that's going to be interesting. Do I think the Knicks have a chance? I do think the Knicks have a chance. But I just keep looking at Boston at plus 380. And I don't know, something just strikes me that they've been able to maintain. They've been able, without their best player, to be second in the conference. Without their best player, they're second in the conference. Without their best player, looking at defensive ratings, they're ninth. Ninth. This is a team that's been rolling with Neemias Queta as a front court. That's it. And they're still ninth defensively. This is a team that just got themselves an offensive center without having to trade Neemias Queta and Nikola Vucevic. Nikola Vucevic isn't, to me, a title-winning piece, but it fulfilled a need that you can hardly call a need. All year long, we're saying there's size there. They need their size. They're going to get banged out in the post by all these big guys, by teams like the Denver Nuggets. And you know what? This team has stayed in second place. And I'm not going to be the one to disrespect them, because I know that Jason Tatum could end up potentially coming back, whether it's, first round, mid-second round, right at the end of the season. There's something there with this team. They've been able to perform without Jason Tatum. And that's a testament right there to Jaylen Brown. Because I was looking at this team. A lot of people wrote them off. I didn't write them off. I still thought that they'd be playing 500 ball. With their experience, they could slow you down. They're well coached, but I didn't think they'd be this good. That's incredible. That's just what we've seen from them. And they have the experience. That's the big thing here. What are the Spurs lacking? Experience. What are the Cavs lacking? True experience. This team, this Boston team, has the experience. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. But I want to ask my guest here of the day, Armando Marsal, bringing him on because he is part of the NBA team at fantasyguru.com. What's going on, Armando? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Armando, how about yourself, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was just talking and ranting about the Celtics here. What were your honest thoughts of the Celtics after we knew that Jason Tatum was going to miss most, if not the entire season? Did you leave them for dead, or did you think they'd still be able to compete?
No, I thought I kind of agree with you. You mentioned them being about a 500 team. I thought they were going to be a competitive team in the East because it's usually wide open, right? The East is wide open at most years. It's not as competitive and as difficult as the West. So I thought they would be competing. I am very surprised. But to me, I think that the biggest takeaway is Jaylen Brown is a superstar, right? Like, I think we can agree he's a superstar. It was always, there was always is he one? Is he not one? Because he was behind the Jason Tatum, light. But this guy is a superstar. So Boston has two superstars on their team. I think the future is very bright. I actually think that they have, in my opinion, the best chance in the East to make it to the finals. I like your call on the plus 380 bet. I'm seeing it on FanDuel at plus 350. So take advantage of that extra plus 30 there that where we're getting it. So I think they're a force to be reckoned with. They're playing great basketball. Yes, they're missing Tatum, but they still have a very good team. Like, this is a very good team, and they're also deep. And I think that's very important in the postseason. You mentioned the Knicks bench not playing well. That's a key factor, like, right, going into the postseason, because you kind of need that depth, right? Because the rotations get a little bit smaller, and those guys coming off the bench, they have to produce. So for me, I'm surprised that they're playing as well as they're playing, if we're being honest. But I'm not stunned that, Jaylen Brown has taken over and taken that big step forward, and the fact that they're competing at a high level.
Now, what about the Cavs, Armando? I mean, they make a big splash. They get James Harden. They already have all the offense they can handle. But they have James Harden. What they did was they kind of traded for defensive pieces and Ellison Schroeder, and then they gave up Garland after that. But do you see, because according to the books and what we're seeing there, the books indicate that the Harden addition should lead this team to the NBA Finals. And for me, as much as I want to be there, and maybe I need to wait to see when Evan Mobley comes back, what this team is looking like full strength. But yes, on paper, it's impressive. But do you feel that James Harden is a championship winning piece?
In theory, he's supposed to be, right? But I agree with you. I kind of want to wait and see, man. I don't trust it. Sometimes people, the talent is great, but the attitude, what the presence in the locker room, it really impacts in the negative way sometimes, right? And I kind of guess that's what we're getting from James Harden. When you look at his career, like there's always an issue in the locker room. There's always an issue with something. And I think that could be the case here. I'm not buying into Cleveland, man. I want to see it before I believe it. If that's dead money, that's dead money for me. If you don't want to bet them, but you put it this way. You sent me a question, right? And they're not on a list of teams I think could potentially win in the East. Like they're the fourth on my list.
Wow, even with Harden, nice.
Yeah, they're the fourth on my list right now. And I like Detroit over them, if we're being honest. I think Detroit's playing incredible basketball. And then the Knicks, man, I like the Knicks too. I like the Knicks over Cleveland as well. Like those are, for me, it's Boston, Detroit, New York, and then we got Cleveland. And I don't feel comfortable with Cleveland, man. Even with the addition, right? Like even with the addition, because in theory, it's supposed to be like, all right, they should be the favorite now. And even the books don't have them as the favorite.
So what about the West, man? Do you think the Thunder are an automatic into the championship? We've seen the Spurs play them very nicely, but are the Spurs' lack of experience in the postseason going to get to them? I mean, what do you think about the Western Conference?
I think it's tough to bet against the Thunder, right? Like they're so good. They've been here before, like, and I think that was the thing with them, right? Like they were kind of getting there, and they were always too young, kind of what we're talking about the Spurs. And I feel like that could be the Spurs this year, right? Where they get there, they'll compete at a high level, but the inexperience could be a factor here. I actually think Denver could make strong noise there in the West as well. Like they have that experience. I kind of look at it like the Chiefs of the NFL, right? You kind of coast and do your thing, and with that, but then come postseason, they take it up a notch. So for me, look, it's tough to bet against OKC. I think that the winner of the NBA finals this year is going to come out of the West. I think it's, you look at these teams, you got San Antonio's playing incredible basketball. Denver, when they're fully healthy, they're a force to be reckoned with. OKC, I mean, they're playing great. So for me, like I think those are the top three teams. You got a couple other teams, right, where you can make a case for maybe making some type of noise. The Lakers, they have the talent to do so. I think they're a team that can make some noise. And me, man, I'm always like the Timberwolves, man. I'm a big fan of Anthony Edwards. They have strong pieces. I don't know if they have enough to, for what it takes to beat some of these teams that are higher above them right now. But that's not a team I would want to face in the postseason if I'm an opposing team. So that's kind of that, dark horse to be looking for, at least for me, in the NBA playoffs.
I'm with you, man. And the Wolves, by the way, which have improved their defense, they were very vulnerable, kind of sneaky vulnerable earlier. We were able to attack them. But Naz Reid, plus 190 to win Sixth Man of the Year. He should win it almost every year. He's just that good. Armando, before we start diving into our team reviews from 2025, you and I are kicking it off. And throughout the rest of the week, Ray Flowers will be talking about different teams with Tyler Beaker and Russell Clay, all of us part of fantasyguru.com. What do you have going on the football side on the site?
Yeah, well, right now we are working. Well, so nothing this week. We're not much content on the site. We got the podcast coming out later this week. We're going to be rolling out very soon the rookie profiles, prepared for the NFL draft. We got obviously this show each and every week. We're going to be doing team previews, and that's what we got rolling on the site right now. But lots of plans for the upcoming weeks, upcoming months. Obviously, draft season is right around the corner. Like NFL draft is not that far. It seems like it's far, but you'll see how quickly that gets here. So we'll have a lot of content for the NFL with rookie profiles and all of that stuff.
So Armando, and by the way, give Armando a follow at Armando_Marsal on X. A lot of great content Armando puts out, including fantasy football here. Now, let's talk about some changes here with Arizona, because we're going to be going in alphabetical order throughout the week. The only time, I won't be previewing Wednesdays. I'll break from the previews, and then you'll get back to them on Thursday and Friday. You'll all be able to follow along. And what's great, by the way, about us going in alphabetical order is that you could check out previous episodes of Fantasy Sports Daily right there on YouTube, or even on the Elite Plus network at fantasyguru.com. They're all posted there afterwards too, so you can check it out if you missed the Cardinals. I wonder what Armando has to say about the Cardinals. Boom! Check out a couple of episodes ago. You'll be able to see it. What do you think of the Mike LaFleur hire for Arizona?
I think it's interesting. Like, obviously, we know the tree he comes from. He did a good job as the coordinator there in Los Angeles. They're already saying that he's going to be calling the plays, so I'm excited for that. Interested to see what happens here with the quarterback situation, with the offense. I think there's going to be some changes in that department. So interested to see who he brings along and who's going to be under center there. But I think this is a fun hire for Arizona. It's a team that, the run game was an issue last year. The offensive line had a ton of injuries, so that obviously didn't help. But the passing game itself, wasn't terrible. Brissett had a pretty solid year. There was some big moments for Michael Wilson last year. Trey McBride had an exceptional season. So interested to see, what happens here in the quarterback position. But I think they brought in the right guy, for if they're kind of making a transition for a quarterback, this is the kind of guy you want there. An offensive-minded coach, someone who, has a pretty good, a tree here, when you look at it, where he's done and, his impact. So I like it for Arizona. I think it was a much needed hire. And I think, he's going to have a lot of success here, in my opinion.
It was interesting, man, when you watch the teams that come out of this division and how hard I equate this division to, like in the World Cup, the ring of death or whatever, the group of death, because that's how great this division is. But then you've got this team in it. And like you said, they were still able to produce while we're playing the game of, is Kyler Murray going to be hot or not this year? Jacoby Brissett comes in, and you still saw the offense hum, even when Marvin Harrison goes down, and then all of a sudden Michael Wilson pops out. And we saw that, Armando, as a correlation, that when Marvin Harrison was out, Michael Wilson would pop off. When he'd be back in, he wouldn't be targeted nearly as much. So my question to you is, new coach and all, ran a very fluent offense in Los Angeles. Does Michael Wilson enter this year getting a bigger role in the offense, maybe taking away from Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit?
So it's difficult to say yes or no to that, but what we have to work with, like, it was a significant difference, right? So last year, Wilson was averaging 4.9 targets per game when Marvin Harrison was on the field. Without Marvin Harrison, 13.6 target per game. So he obviously a significant difference. We have to take into account that you also have Trey McBride that's accounting for a significant target share there. So there's a lot of mouths to feed here. I think 5 to 6 targets, kind of what he was seeing before, when Marvin Harrison was on the field. I think that's very reasonable. I think there's paths to, maybe 7, 8 targets on some weeks, depending on game script. But I don't think his role is going to be all that much higher than when it was last year when everyone is healthy. Because again, if it wasn't because we had Trey McBride occupying over a 20% target share there, then you got Marvin Harrison hovering in that range as well. Like, you're talking about almost half of the target share gone. So it's tough to have Wilson for a 20, or even 19, 20, 21% target share here. I do think he's going to have a solidified role, but that doesn't mean it's a high target volume on every week. So for me, yes, I do think he's going to cover the role. He had a role last year, even with Marvin Harrison. It was just not as solidified as it was with Harrison off the field.
It's funny. We're talking about, almost in reverse here, we're talking about the pass catchers of this team. But the big question is, who's going to be throwing them the football? Because Brissett was solid. But let's remember, before they have an out with Kyler Murray, they got 2 very expensive years ahead of him with that contract. And where Brissett, I believe he's done it as a free agent after this upcoming year. I mean, what do you do if you're Arizona at this point? Because there's going to be a lot of dead money if you stick with a Brissett.
I mean, I've read that there's possibility that they cut Kyler Murray before the deadline.
Just take the hit.
They're gonna eat, but it'll. So I'm not exactly sure. So I know he's fully guaranteed the 36,800. And then from what I've read, if he is still on the roster by March 11th, so in less than a month, it would trigger a $20 million guarantee for the following season. right? That's beyond the 36.8 million that they're taking the hit at the 2025 season. So I'm not sure what's going to happen here. But I've read reports, and this is Ian Rappaport. So this is not, this is Ian Rappaport report that there's a chance that he could move on, like they could move on from him. And I'm not sure if that means cutting or not, but if they keep him on beyond March 11th, they're going to take a significant hit here. So I'm going to be keeping a very close eye between now and then. You can also see them move. They might keep him and move him. Like there's so many different options here, but I think we're going to see a new quarterback in Arizona in 2026. I don't think it's going to be Kyler Murray.
I mean, man, we got to be thinking the cap hit this year is set to be $52 million for just 2026 for Kyler Murray. What do you think overall of Kyler Murray? Like when we're talking 10 years down the line, is he going to be just some rando that we bring up? Or do you think that he's had a good enough career that we have to pay that respects? Because I just don't, is it that he's been hurt the last few years? He hasn't reached his full potential. Is it coaching? What is it with Kyler Murray?
I've never been a Kyler Murray fan. Like ever since he entered the NFL, I was always, yes, he's athletic. Yes, obviously he has a good arm. He could run, but he doesn't possess the size for to be a quarterback. Like I think he's too small. And I think that leads to injuries, right? Like I think his size in the NFL leads to injuries with his style of play. So for me, durability is a big issue. And if you're not in the field, it doesn't matter how good you are, right? You're not producing for me as a franchise, as a team, as an offense. So for me, that's always been my kind of like the thing I don't like about Kyler Murray. And you get down to the red zone, he cannot see the end zone. Like we're being honest, he cannot see beyond the offensive defensive line. So kind of one of the big reasons why Tua, like for me, wasn't a big guy, aside from many other things. But yeah, man, I think Kyler Murray is going to be just a guy. I think he could be a serviceable, obviously, starter. He's produced pretty good numbers. I think from a fantasy standpoint, yes, exciting. But from the actual NFL standpoint, no, not someone that I view as a top 15 quarterback in the NFL right now. Like I'm not fantasy. The NFL and fantasy, two different things, right? Like let's be clear, because everyone always gets those two confused. We're talking NFL, and for me, from an NFL standpoint, I just don't see him as a top 15 quarterback in the NFL right now.
Neither do I, man. Neither do I. And it was always, well, he's great with his legs and all, but then there's beyond that, and that's really all that's there at this point. And this team was able to perform without him for a good portion of last year.
Far more efficient, right? They were far more efficient without him. Like
yes, and here's the other thing.
They could be passing him at least.
They were forced to abandon their running game too. That's the other big thing with Arizona. They like James Conner was who I drafted, of course, on like all of my teams. James Conner was going to be once again a big part of this offense, and then getting bent. I thought this year was going to be kind of like the passing of the torch, maybe the changing of the guard, because I was looking at James Conner's contract, even going back to last year. And James Conner has one more year on his deal, but they could get out of it here. Now, the big question is, though, can they risk it? Because the rest of their running backs haven't been able to stay healthy either. So after we saw for, half the year, a non-existent run game, what do you make of the Cardinals' rushing attack? And is that something that they're going to have to address in the draft?
Yeah, so the thing is, Connor's going to be 31. He's returning from a season-ending ankle injury. I'm not sure they bring him back. So if they cut him, they would save $8 million against the cap in 2026, right? I think that's a big number. Considering we didn't get to see Trey Benson last year all that much, right? Because I was like overly invested in Trey Benson. I was expecting the passing the torch from James Conner to Trey Benson. I thought durability was going to be an issue with Conner, given, his history and the fact that he was getting up there in age and the fact that he had so many, opportunities and touches this season before. So like, I was a bit concerned about his durability. I love James Conner. To me, he's one of those running backs I've often drafted, aside from last year. And Trey Benson just was unable to stay healthy himself. He played, just 4 games, if I'm not mistaken, and just couldn't get it going. I think a healthy Trey Benson can carry the load, can be an every down back for this offense. But I do think that they will be adding a piece to this backfield. They cannot go into the season, relying just on Trey Benson, whether it's through the draft, whether it's free agency. I'm pretty confident that they're going to, add some depth to this backfield. But I do think that they might, that they should, and they will give, Trey Benson that opportunity to at least, earn that starting job here in 2026. So wouldn't be surprised though, them adding any pieces here at all.
So, I mean, let's talk about the draft, though, for a second here. What do you think they need to address here? Because you're saying, they're going to give Benson a shot here if they decide to fully move on from James Conner. Is it the offensive line to try to protect them and protect the Brissett or slash Kyler Murray, who we still have to take into consideration here? Is that the area to go? Because their offensive line just wasn't that strong last year.
No, the offensive line was a massive issue. Aside from injuries, they just didn't play well. They dealt with a lot of injuries. They had to move. There was a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts here. That obviously played a role in the struggles with the offensive line. But I do think that that's going to be their number one priority. In my opinion, they're the offensive line. That's going to be the number one priority here. The quarterback position. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do that through the draft, if they're going to look at free agency, if they're going to look to trade. I could see this team do so many different things at that quarterback position, but I do think that they're going to be prioritizing the offensive line. I think you can also help, with their pass rush, get a little bit more defense, that defensive line help in that department there. I think their receivers, maybe they can add, but I think with Michael Wilson as your wide receiver too, I think you're doing good. Like you have Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. I've always been a Michael Wilson fan. I think he can, stretch the field. I think he's a big playmaker. So for me, I think he's a great complement to Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think you're good there. They can add some, depth there if they want, but I don't think it's a need. And I think the backfield, like we talked about, I don't know if they're going to do that through the draft or if they're going to go ahead and get an experienced player, someone who's been around to complement the young Trey Benson there. But I definitely think the number one thing is offensive line. And you can never have too much offensive line, Fensty. You know that. Like we talk about, it's the trenches. That's where it begins. And I think everyone overlooks that. The offensive line is so important. And I think that it's something they definitely need to beef up here.
The Eagles are the perfect example
Yes.
of that. They are. With the protection that Jalen Hurts gets, it's unbelievable how much time for the last few years. So you're right. You can never have too many pieces. But let me ask you this, though. Flipping it to fantasy for a second. When we're looking at Trey McBride, we're looking at him as a potential, second round pick going in? Is he going to get the Brock Bowers treatment going in? Because why not? The guy gets 100+ targets like it's going out of style every single year. So what are your thoughts regarding Trey McBride? Because there is a new coach. Could they possibly take away from McBride at all? Because a mid-second round price point is pretty hefty.
Look, my answer is very simple. I'm not drafting him in the second round. However, it does not mean that if you draft him in the second round, you're doing something wrong. I mean, is he a value there? Is he worth that? I do think so, right? You mentioned it. The opportunities that he gets, not many players, and forget the tight end position, not many players in the NFL are getting those kind of opportunities. He has a big presence in the red zone as well. I think he's going to continue to be the primary target for this offense. I don't think it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. It's going to continue to be Trey McBride. I think he's going to be the lead, receiver on that offense there. So is it worth it? Yes, you can make a case for it in the second round. For me, am I doing it? No, it's just the opportunity cost at other positions. I like to be very aggressive with the receivers in these rounds. I like to be aggressive. Sometimes a running back falls that you don't expect him to fall in that second round. And I like to, target these kind of players there. For me, I tend to wait at that tight end. I still think you get a top five tight end, and you don't necessarily have to invest a top 6 round for a top 5 tight end, right? So for me, I usually wait a little longer at the position. However, it doesn't mean that you're making a mistake if you're drafting him in the second round. I did want to be clear about that.
No, for sure, man. And look, you have to decide because how you want to handle when you spend up for a tight end, you're expecting those 100+ targets right there. Something happens and you miss out. And trust me, some of the Brock Bowers owners last year, they really felt it. Not through any fault of Brock's or anything. It's just he got hurt. That's what happened. So you lost out on an early second rounder because of that. And there are a bunch of players at the position, over half of them, that are going to go in the 7th, 8th round or beyond. So that's where Armando's talking about with the value. Now, what kind of value do you think Marvin Harrison actually has? Because it's clear that he hasn't hit his potential that we thought he had coming out of college here. What are your thoughts on Marvin Harrison going into 2026?
You know, there used to be a thing in the NFL entering the third year. That's the breakout year for the receiver. I think we could see that with Marvin Harrison Jr., right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have an insane year and finish as a top 3 receiver. That's not what I'm saying. If you look at the numbers so far throughout his career, PPR rankings, wide receiver 30, wide receiver 50. Last year he played just 12 games. When you look at PPR points per game, he's been wide receiver 42, wide receiver 40. Right. So he's been a wide receiver 4 throughout his season. I think he has top 24 potential. I truly do. I would probably be taking him. Obviously, it's too early to determine ADP and where he's going to be going. But if I end up with him as my, based on how I draft, if I end up with him as my wide receiver 3 or even my flex wide receiver, I'm going to be very, very happy because I could see a path to a top 24 season. We obviously have to see what develops with the quarterback position, who they bring in, what happens there, and all of that. There's a lot of moving pieces here, but as far as the talent, as far as the player profile, to me, nothing has changed. I still think he has elite talent, and I still think he's nowhere. I don't even think he's scratched the surface to his ceiling just yet, but I do think you're going to see a massive step forward in year 3 for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think what's happened with him is expectations have been super high since he entered the NFL. And I think it kind of, went back last year. He dealt with injuries and obviously was limited as far as, certain things. But I think a healthy Marvin Harrison Jr. could have a really big 2026 season.
Armando Marsal, you love him. He joins Fantasy Sports Daily every single Tuesday at about 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Talk some football. I believe Armando next week will be hitting on the Buffalo Bills, which will be another interesting one where we'll be like, oh, is this the year? Is this the year? Where probably it's not the year. But still, from a fantasy standpoint, we will still tackle all of that. Armando, thank you so much again for hanging out with me, man.
Always a blast, Fensty. I appreciate you having me on, man.
The NBA back in session on Thursday, so you all better get ready here because I'm planning on a big final couple of months here before this season is over. Armando going to be part of that as we're both part of the NBA team. Want to thank all of you for hanging out. I'll be back noon Eastern. Rich Miletto is going to stop by. We're going to talk some NASCAR. I'm going to talk some more futures with all of you. I kind of split it between the 2 days and the 2 shows. Noon Eastern, Fantasy Sports Daily, right here on the Elite Plus Network, part of fantasyguru.com.